I have a couple of reminders. First, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Candy Miller, CMA AAMA. I am a trustee on the Board of Trustees, and I am the chair of the Leadership Development Strategy Team. I would like to remind you all to please mute yourself um, unless you're speaking. And if you have any questions, raise your hand or place your question in the chat, and the we will be monitoring the chat and monitoring your hands. So if you do have a question, we will call on you or answer your question. Thank you so much. A couple of other housekeeping things. If you would please put your name and member number in the chat just so that we know who's all here. That would be wonderful. At the end of the session, we will be putting a QR code and a link in the chat, and you will have 3 hours after the session to register for that, and that's how you will receive your CEU credit for that for this session. I would like to introduce just a few people, and give me just a moment. Sorry, pop-ups keep on coming up. I would like to introduce our CEO and legal advisor, Don Belesa. I would like to introduce Virginia Thomas, CMA AAMA, who is our AAMA president. Monica Case, CMA AAMA, our immediate past president. I would like to introduce the members of my leadership strategy team, which most of them are online here. They are all CMA AAMAs. Debbie Houston, Casey Corneliuson, Jeanette Tyler, Carla Hunter, Pam New, Shirley Sawyer, Jasmine Fierstein, Claire Houghton, Sherry Bogar, Sandra Williams, Denise Josephak, and Krista Smith. I'd like to thank them for all of their work putting this session together and the work on the committee. Especially today, this committee is, excuse me, the quote, quote, team yellow are the ones that put this specific session together. And I will now introduce the team leader for that team, Carla Hunter. And if you could introduce the rest of your team and then introduce your first speaker, that would be absolutely wonderful. And I do ask that while the speaker is speaking, if others could keep their cameras off, because that will help with the distraction and just putting focus on the speakers. Once again, if you have any questions, please reach out. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, this is embarrassing because I don't have my papers with me, so I have no idea the names of the people that I'm on the team with. I know, like, I've talked to everybody, but I cannot remember their names, and I do not have them here with me. The ones that were directly on my team. So I guess I'll just go straight into introducing Darlene then. If that's all right, is that fine to just go ahead?
That's fine. Go ahead, Carla.
Okay. All right. So Darlene began her career in healthcare as a certified medical assistant in 1980. After working for a cardiologist for 4 years, she decided she needed more and began attending Purdue University in 1984. And she graduated with her BSN in 1988 and became a registered nurse. She was hired at her hospital in 2009 after a 20-year career as a critical care nurse in 2 other health systems. She began her tenure with MHP as an OR circulator and remained in that role for 6 years. She then assumed the role of clinical practice coordinator in surgery. After obtaining her MSN and MBA from Indiana Wesleyan University in 2017, she became the director of population health. In that role, Darlene was instrumental in the development and implementation of quality incentive programs, which have led MHP to becoming a leader in the quality performance amongst our peers. In 2023, Darlene's role transitioned to Director of Quality Management, a role that has a system-wide impact on the acute and ambulatory sides of the house. In this position, her passion is to bring together people and processes in a collaborative manner that will most positively impact patient care. Her philosophy is that as a health system, we share one patient population, and to provide the best patient care, we must work together as one team. In 2025, Darlene was elevated to Chief Quality Officer, where she continues to impact acute and ambulatory quality performance across the system and oversees care management, infection control, and employee health. Darlene is the proud mother of 2 grown sons and has 3 grandchildren. She enjoys riding lots of miles on her bicycle and caring for her rescue dog, Tramp. She considers herself a very down-to-earth and will often be heard stating, "I say what I think and I think what I say." Her transparency is to be admired, and she is one of my most valuable mentors I've ever had in my life.
Carla, thank you so very much for that introduction. That was really nice for you to pull all that together, and your comment there at the end, that just touches my heart. So thank you. The feeling's mutual. You know, I have great respect and admiration for your knowledge, the work that you do, the perseverance that you have, and the detail-orientedness that you bring to your role at Major Health Partners. You all may or may not recognize what a very, very valuable contributor to your team that Carla is. But if you don't know that already, time will tell, because she definitely is very, very valuable and brings a lot to the table in more ways than one. So I will share my screen here. Now I'm going to be very honest. I tested this last night and it worked okay. So I'm going to hope that it works today, that I can share my PowerPoint. So here goes. Are you all able to see that okay?
Yes.
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 Okay, very good. All right, so I'm just going to go through, some slides here and kind of review what we're going to talk about, here today. Our agenda. So this is my dog Tramp. I'd like to introduce him to you. He is going to be 4 years old this year. I've had him for a couple of years. He is a rescue dog. I'm a dog lover, so I'm just going to share a little bit about myself with you as we go through my presentation. But I like to tell people his name was Tramp when I adopted him. And so I didn't want to change his name since he was 2 years old. And so he and I are officially Lady and the Tramp, right? So, the Disney movie Lady and the Tramp. So he and I are that team. In my presentation today, we're going to review goal setting with the SMART methodology, which you may already have some information around setting goals around that algorithm, but we'll review that just a little bit today. And then the second part of my presentation, I'm going to share with you, my journey of perseverance, and that it was a little convoluted and not always pretty, as life is messy. But we're gonna just kind of walk through what that kind of looked like, because I think many of you on the call will be able to relate to that because, you know, none of our lives are picture perfect. But it doesn't mean that, you know, you still can't push forward and accomplish anything that your heart desires. So we will just go over an overview of how setting our goals and sticking with those can drive our career forward. But for many of us, and for you as well, that will be just one step at a time. It's not always easy, but some of the time when we just look down the road too awfully far and our goal looks difficult to obtain and almost unachievable, it's easy to just give up and be sidelined. You know, it's like, gosh, I just can't do that. I can't. You're going to hear a little bit about my thinking on that when I started down my career path and my educational path. But so sometimes just looking at things in smaller pieces and just one step at a time makes it much more palatable. So what is goal setting? We're just going to, you know, here's the official definition. We identify something specific, you know, that we would like to accomplish. We find a way to make it measurable. Again, it has to be achievable, attainable, meaning, you know, something that's within our realm to accomplish, relevant, and have a timeline. You know, we have to kind of set a goal, the timeline for our goals. I want to, you know, obtain a certain certification by the end of 2026, and something that's a measurable goal. So that's important. I think that, you know, we do have to push ourselves to grow, but at the same time, you know, we have to set our next goal that we want to accomplish something that's attainable. You know, we can't skip steps. You know, we have to kind of take them one at a time, and before you know it, you know, you'll be to your goal. The importance of goal setting, it provides direction and focus in our lives. It gives us motivation, helps us measure, you know, the progress that we're making toward where we want to land, and it also makes us accountable. You know, if we don't have goals set, then how do we know if we're making progress and moving toward what we want to accomplish? And the insert there that I found online, it says set goals, not limits. I think some of the time people are hesitant to set goals because they have fear of failure, or it just seems too difficult, you know. But the flip side of that is that, you know, don't your goals, don't make them so small when you have it about you to be able to actually do something bigger and better. So, you know, goals, you know, are something to work toward, to obtain, but at the same time to not limit us. You know, don't limit yourself. And I'll share a little bit more when I, you know, talk about, you know, my journey. You know, the limits were never even thought about, you know, but anyway. Just quickly, SMART goals. I think these are fairly common knowledge for the most part. SMART goals need to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound, meaning we need to put a timeline on when we want to accomplish something particular. Strategies for professional growth. First off, we should, you know, endeavor to be lifelong learners, and that's what I mean by continuous learning and development. And there's a lot of different ways that we can go about doing that. It starts, you know, when we're very young. The picture that you see there is my granddaughter Abigail, who graduated from kindergarten this year. And so, you know, it kind of all starts there, you know, and then, you know, graduate from 8th grade and high school and onward, and whatever the case may be. And some of the time, you know, that looks different for everyone. You know, we all have different talents and skills, but I just want to encourage every single one of you, you know, don't underestimate yourself, which is, you know, something that I did in high school and beyond that, and I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to that point in the presentation. But don't ever underestimate yourself, because you are smarter than you think and smarter than you give yourself credit for. And you would be surprised what you can tap into and see yourself when you decide to, actually. Some of the other strategies that I mentioned here is seeking feedback and mentorship. And I think that's one of the things that, has made Carla and I's relationship, very good, is that, I seek feedback from her often in a lot of the things that we put in place in family and internal medicine, et cetera. And then also just in her single parenting and, her professional, career, we chat, and, I provide a fair amount of encouragement, just, because I care. Networking and building relationships is another strategy. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about, I bolded building relationships there, because that is the foundational unit of any kind of accomplishment and collaboration. Because I have this philosophy that people who have good work relationships and even personal relationships, but in this perspective or this realm today, we're talking about, professional relationships, that, first off, when we are trying to develop and implement a new workflow, a new process, a new service line, whatever the case may be, everybody that needs to be drawn to the table to work on something together as such, there can be some disagreement. There can be some difference of opinion. There can be sometimes you come to the point that you agree to disagree, but nonetheless, you still have to be able to come together and find the common ground and collaborate to get the job done, to accomplish the goals that you have set before you. And where the relationships come into play there is that, when you have a good relationship with someone, it's kind of hard to, just get all kind of ticked off at them if they don't see things the way you see things. If their ideas, because their service line brings a different perspective to the table than yours does, neither one is better than the other. But when you have those good relationships built with people, then people are willing to compromise and negotiate and say, okay, here's the pieces that we have in common. Now, how can we, develop the rest from here? It provides a starting point, a very, very important piece that will bode well throughout your entire career if you focus on, building and maintaining good relationships with the people that you work with. Another strategy is taking on new challenges and responsibilities. And, Carla, I don't want to embarrass you terribly on this call, but, Carla does that all the time. Whenever there is a new initiative, either coming from quality, population health, whatever the case may be, she volunteers to be that champion, to be that lead. She, at Major Health Partners, she is our hypertension navigator. She jumped in with 2 feet, or 4 feet almost, when our facility wanted to implement the American Heart Association Target BP program, which required a quote unquote, hypertension navigator to work with our patients and our providers. And she is that liaison. She volunteered to jump in and has done a stellar job at developing and maintaining that program for Major Health Partners. So, that's just one example of taking on new challenges and responsibilities. And you don't have to always sit back and wait for someone to ask you to do that. Just look for those opportunities, because they're out there. There's all kinds of things that, that you as staff, can step up and volunteer for. Or at minimum, let your practice manager or your direct supervisor, let them know, hey, if there's anything that comes down the pipe, you need to volunteer. If there's a new program coming along, I'd love to be a part of it. Those opportunities that are kind of what I would call, sidebar or offline educational opportunities that can contribute to our professional growth, those are all over the place. There's a lot of those opportunities, and that kind of professional growth doesn't require, specific academia or degrees. I mean, people can grow some of the time just where they are. So just, be willing to take advantage of those opportunities and to look for them, and let your manager know that you're interested in, in growing with the organization, and, what can you be a part of, and how can you contribute and be a part of those things. So they will be happy. I don't know any manager that wouldn't be happy to, have ambitious and motivated staff, in their department, that are willing to step up and provide some of those things. So it's a win-win. It's a win for the practice, as well as it's a win for you professionally. And so speaking of relationships, one very, very important thing to remember when building relationships, and I'm going to share a quote with you that I came across several months back. Craig Rochelle is, he's well known to me, but he is a Christian leadership, I'm going to say person, that I listen to his podcast quite a bit. But he spoke this quote, and it really resonated with me, in that you may impress people with your strengths, AKA, in my situation, maybe my credentials and all the things, that I've accomplished over the years. But at the end of the day, that really, doesn't mean all that much unless we are also at the same time down to earth and vulnerable and transparent. And we're going to talk a little bit more about transparency later in the presentation. But, we all know people who we respect them and we value them for their strengths and how strong they are and what a great job that they do. But, when are the times that we really connect with them? It's through their weaknesses. It's through our weaknesses. When we are transparent and vulnerable, and we're able to, just freely admit, hey, this is something I'm really not good at, or I'm unsure of, or I'm not as educated about, or whatever the case may be. Just be willing to be forthright and honest, and people will connect with you through your weaknesses, not necessarily your strengths. I just wanted to share that. So staying motivated, when we have set some goals, using the SMART methodology, or however we've come about that, and I'll be very honest with you, and that, back in my day, SMART goals were not a thing. And generally, for the most part, my trajectory of professional growth and education, etc., came out of necessity of life changes for me. So, that may be the case for many of you as well. And I think, there's probably not very, very many people who have, since the beginning of time, as a kindergartner or whatever the case may be, that I want to, say, be a veterinarian and then become a. Some do. I mean, some do. Some always know in their heart what they want to do when they grow up, right? But not all of us. And I was one of those people. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So how do we stay, motivated? Well, first I will just share with you. There's my 3 grandkids. We were in a big old swing down in Cincinnati, enjoying the day several months back. But anyway, those are the 3 that kind of help keep me motivated at this age and stage in my life. So I wanted to share that with you. But how do we stay motivated? We celebrate the small wins. That's that step by step. I remember when I did my master's program at Indiana Wesleyan, it was a dual degree together. It was a 3-year program. There were 60 credit hours that I had to earn. And I was still working full time in surgery. And so I would go home, my shift was 7 to 3:30, and I would go home in the afternoon. I would take a quick little nap because I would get up at 5 in the morning, and then I would get up, have dinner, and then the rest of the evening until 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, I was working on my master's program online. But as far as step by step, what I just want to share with you is, the one thing that got me through those 60 credit hours and that 3-year journey is that I had the entire curriculum printed off and posted on my computer desk. And that program particularly, we only took one course at a time, but it was rapid fire. It would either be a 4-week or a 6-week class, but it was a full semester's worth of work in 4 or 6 weeks. So you didn't dare get behind because it was so fast and so rapid fire that if you got behind on some assignments, you just likely would not be able to catch up. But the small wins for me through that, I only focused on that one class. This is all I have to worry about right now. Don't even look at the whole list that you've got yet to complete. And each time, I would finish a class, I would mark it off the list. And then I would just look to the next one. And just those small chunks at a time, I just would look at those just one at a time, celebrate the small wins. And a journal of my progress for me was a list of the curriculum and all the classes, and I would just mark them off one at a time, one at a time, one at a time. And so another, strategy is to stay connected to your why. And, for me and for many people, I think, the most important thing is when we set goals and we want to accomplish something, is that it has to be something that we want to do for ourselves, for us. Because often if we do it for any other reason, we set ourselves up for failure, because the motivating factor, whether it's because your kids want you to do something, your parents want you to do something, your spouse wants you to do something, whatever the case may be, those are external motivating factors, and oftentimes those fall away, or they don't become significant anymore. But when we set goals because it's something we truly want to do more than anything for ourselves, then we can make it happen. We can get it done. And I'm going to give you just a small example of that doesn't have anything to do with professional items, but I was a person very early on. I used to smoke, and I remember I wanted to stop smoking because I had kids, and I really, I was like, oh, I should stop smoking because the kids are in the house. And then I wanted to stop smoking because I didn't like the way it smelled. And then I wanted to stop smoking because other people, being a nurse especially, if it's early, that's really bad for you. You should not smoke. I'm like, I know. So I tried multiple times to quit smoking and failed every time. I would quit for a year or two, then smoke for a year or two, quit for a year or two, smoke for a year or two. But I will tell you, when I was successful because I quit smoking for me. I came to the point in my life that I decided I wanted my quality of life to be the very best that it could be from that moment forward. And that was when I was successful. And so that was 30 years ago. So I've been a non-smoker for 30 years now, but I wasn't successful until I did it for me. When I tried to quit for all these other reasons, I failed. But when I truly did it for me because it was important to me, then I was successful. And then lastly, surround yourself with, supportive peers and mentors and people who will encourage you and who truly want the best for you. Okay, we're going to just turn the conversation here just a little bit, and I want to share this with you. My late husband, who passed 3.5 years ago of pancreatic cancer, used to tease me all the time because I do talk to myself, and so I think many of us do. So he created these little reasons or rationales for why I talk to myself, and I want to share those with you. First and foremost, now I mean these tongue in cheek, and these are meant to be funny, so please don't take them too seriously. But because I love talking to an intelligent person. Second, I love listening to an intelligent person speak. Third, well, sometimes I need expert advice. Fourth, I always get a quick response. And last and most importantly, I always get the answer I'm looking for. So maybe some of you can relate to that and would feel the same. Please feel free to use some of these for yourself. And I think if it's okay, I may just pause right here before I go on to my next slide, just to ask, what kind of questions do you have about goal setting, SMART goals, just anything that I've talked about thus far. Is there anyone on the call that that has any questions? Okay, I will take that silence as no, not at this point, and we will continue on. So the rest of the presentation, I want to talk about, my journey of perseverance, and maybe it can be yours too, if it isn't already. I did notice, that there's a lot of adults, on the call today. So I think much of maybe what I'm about to say and share, many of you can relate to, and hopefully you can. And before I kind of go through my bullet points here, I want to just say a couple of things. And that all the things, that I will share with you about my journey and about my life, first and foremost, I do not, want or seek, any sympathy or sad feelings. I'm sorry that happened to you, etc. Because every single thing in our lives, that has evil intent or harmful, intent, will and can always be turned for good. Even the adversities, even the hardest things. And so for my life, all the things in my life and my life story and my journey, I truly have that belief that those are the reasons that I am who I am today. And, am I like the best and the greatest and the smartest person and all the things? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Not whatsoever. But I do truly feel like all the things have contributed to, my character and my integrity, and who I am today. So anyway, just hopefully you'll understand that. So I'm going to start just a little bit and share with you about my childhood. I grew up on a little 20-acre farm with my mother, who was an alcoholic. Because of that, my sister and I were in and out of foster homes, up until our early teens. There were, I recall several different sets of foster parents, and then the courts would place my sister and I back with my mother, et cetera, and all of that. I never had any doubt really that my mother loved me, but she just had other priorities in her life that her children were not really a part of. The next thing I'll share with you is that if you've ever grown up around alcoholism or had a difficult childhood, there's just certain things that you remember. And I can remember specifically, and again, please, no sympathy for these things. These are just things of my memory that I want to share that will help you just kind of put in total perspective, my life from beginning to where I am now. But, growing up, when we were with my mother, I remember many days of, the only thing we had to eat were crackers and water, for a few days at a time. And, I still have, visions of opening the cabinet, to see what I could find to eat. And, we had crackers and we had water, but, that's what we had. And so we, we did our best with that, my sister and I, while my mom, would be out drinking, et cetera, that kind of thing. So, but enough of that. I think we've all, had times in our lives where, basic, needs as far as, food, clothing, housing, shelter, and things like that have been sparse, have been scarce. And although those are difficult things, they still, contribute, to our character and help us understand what's important in life, because we have those memories that we don't forget, and we never forget where we came from, right? And that's an important thing, because we all have a past, we all have a story, we all have a background, and no matter however much we accomplish in our lives, we should never forget where we came from, because it keeps us humble and down to earth. And I feel, that the adversities in my life have done that for me. My mother, the next thing I'll just share quickly, she, hold on to yourself here, and I'm not even sure if Carla knows this, but my mother was married 8 times. My father was number 7. I have a half sister. Her father was, we're not sure, maybe number 5 or 6, really unclear. But her husband, number 8, my stepfather, at age 11, did a fair amount of, and I won't give details, but sexual abuse. And so, my mother discovered that, kicked him out of the house, and then 2 weeks later took him back. And so from age 11 to 18, I lived in a house, with a man that, I can't say I was in fear of my life, but I just wouldn't allow myself to be in our home or in the house, with him alone. If my mom wasn't home, then I would go to a neighbor's house or a friend's house or something like that. I just wouldn't allow myself to be in the house with him. And a little bit later, you'll understand why I share that specifically from age 11 to 18, because once I turned 18, I moved out and decided I would make my life my own. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Graduated high school in 1978. In high school, well, first I will just share with you that no one in my family had ever gone to college. I didn't think I would ever go to college. I didn't want to go to college. I did well in high school, but I hated high school. I hated to study. I hated to read. I didn't like any of that. I took all secretarial classes. I could type like no other. I could take shorthand. I could file. I could, do all the things. And I just thought being a secretary was just going to be, what I was going to do for my life. I was going to be completely content with that. So after high school, I got my first, I'll call real job, because I think all of us have, through our teen years, had multiple jobs before we were old enough to have a real job. I did the same. I detailed corn. I was a waitress. I mowed grass, just all kinds of things to, earn money so I could buy clothes for myself and things like that. Those were just things that my mother was never able or willing to, provide money for. And, when you're a young girl, you'd like to have some decent clothes and things like that. So I worked to be able to, have some halfway decent things. But anyway, in high school, I did not take any college prep classes. Didn't think I was ever going to go to college, nor did I have the desire. And then my first job at Purdue as a secretary, I, just really thought I had, the job of a lifetime. And that was in 1978. I started making $3.10 an hour. And after my first year, I had my annual evaluation, which was stellar. And I got a raise to $3.25 an hour. And it was at that point in time that I went, well, okay, gotta do something here, because I'm gonna go nowhere really fast at this rate. So that was when it kind of first struck me that, wow, I need to go to college. I need to do something with my life and get some other education, because golly, this high school diploma is just not cutting it. I need to do something else. So when I talked earlier about not looking too far down the road and setting a goal that is that wouldn't seem achievable or attainable, I remember during that point in time thinking about, I need to go to college, but I don't want to commit to a 4-year program. It's like because when you're in high school, 4 years of my life was a lifetime. It's like, are you kidding me? I don't know really what I'm going to do next month, let alone in 4 years. I don't know what I want to do or what I want to be. And so I wasn't willing to even consider, looking at, like, Purdue or IU or any kind of four-year program. I didn't even like high school that much, so I surely wasn't, willing to commit to something like that. So when I thought about what I might like to do other than being a secretary, one of the things that came to mind for me was becoming a dental assistant. And that came to mind to me because, this is another just a transparency piece that I will share with you, but this is why dental assisting popped in my head. Growing up, good, bad, or indifferent, I don't, as a child, I don't, ever remember having a toothbrush or, my mother encouraging me to brush my teeth or anything like that. So by the age of 16, I had a whole, mouthful of decayed teeth, and convinced my mother I wanted to go to a dentist and, get some work done so that I felt like I could smile again and those kinds of things. So, I actually, I think I was 14 when that started. So from 14 to about 16, I just underwent a tremendous amount of dental work. And thankfully, they were able to save my teeth. I have a lot of crowns and caps and bridges and all the things. But I share that because those 2 years sitting in that dental assistant or that dental chair, was the thing that motivated me to say, well, maybe I could be a dental assistant. That seems like a pretty nice job. It's, good hours, it's clean, it's all the things. It's not detasseling corn, it's not shoveling snow, it's not mowing grass. Maybe I could do that. Well, so I went to Ivy Tech and I wanted to join their dental assistant program. And that particular year, which was 79, I graduated in 1980. What they told me was, well, we don't have any openings in the dental assistant program, but we do in the medical assistant program. Why don't we start you in the medical assistant program? And when an opening comes up in the dental assistant program, because people drop out of that quite quickly, and then they said, we'll switch you over. And I was like, okay, well, I'll do that. At that point in time, the medical assistant program at Ivy Tech was a 12-month program. And then at the end of that 12 months, of course, you take your certification test. So in the last, 6 weeks of that 12-month program, I was assigned my externship with a cardiologist. And I think Carla mentioned that in my intro. I worked for him for a total of 4 years. But after about 2 years, I decided, boy, I really, I want to be able to do more than phlebotomy and do EKGs and, file insurance. Back at that point in time, that was the extent of what, medical assisting was really about, at least in that office that I worked in. And I just had a desire that grew in me to want to be able to do more. Well, think back though, so I decided I wanted to go to nursing school, but think back, I didn't take any college prep classes in high school or any of that. So what was I going to do? I got a D in algebra in high school. I was not a math whiz. Had a lot of things that I needed to accomplish before I could even apply to nursing school. So while I worked full time as a medical assistant, I took evening classes at Purdue. With algebra, English, sociology, all the things that I had to do to get myself to a point where I would be eligible that I could even apply for nursing school. So, long story short, which I'm probably making this a little bit too long, so I apologize for that, but I was accepted to nursing school, started in 1984, graduated in 88. And like Carla said, my first 20 years as a nurse, I worked in critical care, and then life circumstances took me to a major hospital where they didn't have an opening in ICU, but they had one in surgery. And I thought, I always thought I should do something different than critical care nursing, so I'll give surgery a try. It'd be something different. And so I did. I will tell you though, in our careers, it's, when you shift from working in one area or doing one thing for a long time, where you kind of become the resource or the resident expert, so to speak, where, in critical care, I had become that, where people will come to me and ask for, help or for questions, and I was a resource to them. And then when I went to work in surgery as an OR circulator, all my critical care background, I mean, it kind of applied, but I was right back down, to the bottom of the rung where I had to start all over and I had to learn a whole new area of nursing that I never knew before. So you have to kind of adjust just mentally and emotionally from becoming where you were once the resident resource and expert to becoming the newbie on the team. And now I have to go seek help from everyone else. And that's where those relationships really come into play, because we need each other and we need to learn from each other. So you have to really just work on developing those and maintaining those good relationships. But in 2014, the main reason that I pursued my master's degrees was that I'd been working in surgery, and I don't know if any of you know what an OR circulator does, but it's very, very physically demanding. Bedside nursing as a whole is very physically demanding, and at that point in time, I was 54 years old. Just some things, kind of happened in my husband's career that, I recognized, gosh, I think, I need to go back to school for two reasons. Number one, I don't think I can physically work as an OR circulator until I'm 70. And then second, just the changes in his career, just made me recognize that I needed to make plans to, be able to take care of myself in case something happened to him, which it did. But so I share that because, we can set SMART goals and we can set a timeline, and on paper, those things make sense and look good, on paper. But for most of us, myself included, and maybe for many of you, the things in our lives that direct our path are different. And, it isn't always pretty because life happens, and sometimes life is messy. And sometimes that, the direction that we find ourselves going are the outcome of something that was kind of negative or not a great thing. But, I will confess to you, good, better, and different. I do have a very deep faith. And, that's why I believe that, God absolutely takes everything intended for evil and he turns it for good. And you'll see, toward the end of my presentation, I just have some philosophies around that that are, based in my faith. But, the bottom line is, everything happens for a reason, and something good comes from everything, even the adversities, even the hard things. I think we can all look back at times in our life and say, gosh, at the time, that was the most heartbreaking or terrible, disappointing thing that happened to me. But now I can look back and see that, gosh, had that not happened, I never would have, and then you can fill in the blank. And for me, that's much of, my journey of perseverance, is that, the adversities are things that, redirected my life towards something positive. So those perspectives are just important to hold to, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a few minutes. Okay, but so with all of I almost don't like to say the word, but with all the accomplishments that I have in my life, I just want to share with you at the end of the day. This is a little poem I wrote about myself several years ago. At the end of the day, I'm just me. All I am is what I have, and what I have is all I am. I'm just me. I wrote that because when I went to nursing school and I was a medical assistant, I was an adult student, and I felt so out of place amongst all those, 18 and 19-year-old girls who, they were there, on scholarships, or their parents were paying for their school and all of that. And I was an adult student, and I was paying my own way, and I was there on a mission. I was there to learn. But I said to myself, no matter what credentials I ever achieve, what job title I ever have, I'll always just still be me. I'll be down to earth. I'll be humble. I'll be myself. And maybe Carla would agree or not. I think she would. I have held to that, but that's been easy because it's not who I am to think more of myself than I ought. And that's kind of we're called to that, to not think more of ourselves than we ought. And I certainly don't do that. I am just me. I'm just like all of you and many others. I'm just me. I'm in the world just trying to make a difference and help people. That's why we all went into the medical field. And those are just important philosophies, I think, to hold on to as we go throughout our journey of our careers. Okay, so some of these things I probably already mentioned, and so if I repeat myself, I apologize for that. I can be kind of guilty of that. I'll say that up front. But I'm going to get a quick drink here and wet my whistle. The way that I view, life, personal and professional, is that it's all about perspective. And one of the things that I want to share with you, about my relationship with my mother, where it's all about perspective, kind of comes into play. And things, something intended for evil being turned for good. When I was growing up, when I was a teenager, and up until my early 20s, because of my childhood and all the things that happened to me, I had a fair amount of animosity toward my mother, not for what she had done to me, but for the mother she wasn't for me. Because as I grew up and I would observe my friends and their mothers and, their home life, et cetera, I was very envious of that. And I recognized and realized what I'd been cheated out of, So I really kind of held that against my mom for quite a long time. And then in my early 20s, I came to the realization she was 40 when she had me. So there was a 40-year age gap. And I thought, she's in her 60s, and I don't know, how long she's going to live. She is my mother, and I still love her no matter what. And it's more important to me that my relationship with her from here on out be as good as it can be, than for me to hold on to whatever animosity or negative feelings that I had toward her. And so I think it's by the grace of God that, I learned to look at, the fact that she was not a role model mother for me, that she didn't teach me how to be a good mother. But the best and most important gift that she gave me was she showed me what kind not to be. And the human mind, the human brain, our hearts, we remember the negative events in our lives so much better than the positive ones. That's just human nature. It just is. But so once I kind of flipped the script in my thought processes, my perspective, rather than holding it against her, I actually thanked her for the gift that she gave me, because I didn't know how to be a good mother once I had children, but I sure didn't know what kind not to be, right? So back to, it's all about perspective. I told you when I turned 18, I moved out of that house that I had a lot of fear and just a lot of trepidation, through those years. And one of the things that once I turned 18 and moved out of that house, I made a decision, and they're based on some of the things that you see here, is that your past does not have to define your future. You can choose a different path. And I certainly did that. Because if you look at, my childhood and my teen years and all the adversities, I'll just call it, that happened to me, I had every excuse under the sun to, be on drugs, to be in jail, to be fill in the blank, to be not a productive member of society. But that's not what I wanted for myself. I wanted a different life, and I knew that I could choose that from that moment forward. So at 18, I moved out and I never looked back, and I just made choices toward, a life that I wanted for myself versus where I came from. But, to that point, we never forget where we came from. And that's what helps us remain humble, down to earth, because humility will, there's someone knocking on my door. I apologize for that. I'm not going to get up and answer it. So, but, lost my train of thought. Anyway, you can just choose a different path. And then about perspective, my computer. Ooh, there we go. We can look at the events in our lives through a negative or a positive lens. We can choose to do that. We don't have to become a victim. We don't have to allow those things to be the reason that we can't excel. That does happen for some people, and that breaks my heart for them, because it doesn't have to be that way. And I already spoke, that everything happens for a reason, and something good comes from everything, even the adversities, even the hard things. Those are the things that are used to redirect us towards the path that we should be on. If it doesn't kill you, it only makes you stronger. We hear that a lot in our lives. So adversity does only make us stronger. And every event in our lives can be turned for good, and it will. A few more things about perspectives, and we're just about to finish up. So I appreciate, your patience and listening, to my rattle, as I often tell myself at work. But is that, we need to be ambitious. Life has an awful lot to offer, but we have to reach out and grab it. It's not going to come to us. We have to seek it, and we have to be willing to put in the work and the effort, and be willing to understand there's going to be speed bumps and be delays, but to still persevere. That, we can still reach our goals, even though some of the time it's not very pretty. When we set our goals, I think I mentioned about just taking things small pieces at a time, one step at a time, just small chunks at a time. We'll be more motivated, and when the speed bumps and the delays do come, they'll be less likely to throw us off our path of goals that we have. As I said, life happens. It gets messy. We just have to take it in stride and never give up. Never give up on what we want for ourselves. On relationships, they are, as I said, the most important piece that will make you successful. Strong work relationships are key because collaboration cannot take place without it. Like I said in meetings, you just can't accomplish the goals that are set before you unless you have those good relationships, then you can collaborate with others. That's just where it starts. I have a strong belief that transparency builds trust. And to build those relationships, don't be afraid to be vulnerable and speak about, where maybe your strengths are not. Say, hey, I'm really good at this, that, or the other, but gosh, this is an area where I need to learn more. Or maybe can you help me with that? I need to grow in this area. Don't be afraid to speak that. Because remember Craig Rochelle says, people will connect with you much more through your weaknesses than through your strengths. And then lastly, there's also a thing about, trusting people that I've learned is that some of the time we have to trust but verify, right? We trust and we give the benefit of the doubt that everybody at the table is there with good intentions and no hidden agendas. But those are always things that we have to just keep in mind and listen to our gut. When you have a gut feeling about something, just have this little gut feeling where something doesn't feel right, you probably exactly right. So verify that. So that's the trust but verify. You know, God gave women innate intuition, and you know, it's pretty spot on. You know, so those gut feelings that we get, I think, you know, many of us on the call, you know, you also likely, you know, say, oh man, yeah, when I didn't listen to my gut, when I didn't listen to that little nudge that was questioning something, ooh, it came back to bite me. So just, you know, always, you know, trust but verify. In conclusion, you know, setting SMART goals and actively pursuing professional growth can lead to a very successful and fulfilling career. Life does happen. Sometimes the journey is messy, like it was for me. But, you know, even though, you know, there were some side steps and some things that were difficult, you know, perseverance will get the job done. And lastly, you know, whatever you do in your life goals, whether it's personal or professional, just make sure you're doing it for you, not for anybody else. Any questions for me?
There was one question in the chat. This is, do you use a planner? If so, is it analog or digital or both?
Well, I have a calendar in my work. We use Microsoft Outlook suite of technology. I keep things on a calendar, and then in my office, I have like a whiteboard where I will keep bullet points or certain things that I have on my radar that I want to do, or meetings that I need to develop protocols for, whatever the case may be. But a planner, like a booklet or a planner, a physical paper planner, I do not. It's all technology. But I use my calendar for that, and then I do have just a whiteboard in my office that I use. I'll glance at the chat here because when I was sharing my presentation, I was seeing the presentation, and so I didn't recognize that there was something.
That's okay. That was the only one that was in there for a question. Does anybody have anything else for Miss Darlene? It doesn't look like it. Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Yes, you're so welcome. You're so very welcome, and thank you for having me. And I just appreciate the opportunity so much. And Carla, I will see you next week at work. So thank you, ladies, very much for everything today. And hopefully you were able to garner just a little bit of encouragement or some thoughts on goal planning and how, you know, you can accomplish anything that you desire to. Thank you.
Thank you, Darlene.
Yes.
It's Candy again. I do appreciate your time and sharing your thoughts and your plan with us. I do really appreciate it. And if there are any other questions, I will once again remind attendees to please put their name and their member number in the chat. And then towards the end of the session, we will be adding a link or a QR code in the chat for you to fill up so that you can get your CEs for the session. Carla, did I see your hand come up?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I looked up the full names of everybody that was on my team, so I wanted to say it since I didn't get to say it at the beginning. But the team was Shirley Sawyer, Krista Smith, and Jasmine Fierstein.
Thank you, Carla. And on that note, I am going to now turn this next portion over to Shirley, who will introduce the next speaker. Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Her PowerPoint's still up on here. So our next speaker is Sue Hawes. Sue has her career has been many things. She has experience including management and a CMA experience in the physician's practice, a hospital setting. She's been a practice administrator prior to moving into the education arena. Employed at Hudson's College as a medical assisting director and program director for the medical assisting program, she has molded great minds to come to the field. I threw that in for you, Sue, because you have.
Thank you.
And she's been employed since 2004 as a medical assistant instructor, and then moved to program director for health information management and medical assisting, serving as the dean of education prior to leaving and joining St. Joseph's Hospital, where she's currently employed. She, outside of medical assisting, something just fell in my house. I don't know if it was, hold on. Okay. My husband dropped something. She has managed the Bangor Masonic Center in Bangor. She has also served as the mayor of her town. She served 9 years and then termed out as city councilor. Now is in her 14th year. Served 6 years as on the school committee. Governor for District 1 for Atriza International. And she's got several different memberships that she's been in. She has been a certified medical assistant since 1992. Served as from 1993 to 2004, served on various national, state, and chapter committees as members and or as chair. 2004, she was the chair of the Strategic Plan Committee. She was a trustee from 2002 to 2005. She is currently serving as the chair of this Continuing Education Board. She has been a mentor to many, many people in the organization. She was our national president from 2018 to 2019. And she is full of knowledge, is what I can say about Sue. I can turn to her for anything. So I'm going to turn this over to her. She does also have a PowerPoint, and I think Sharon's going to put that up for her when she's ready. So thank you, Sue, for doing this for us, and we look forward to hearing what you have.
Well, thank you, Shirley. That was very nice. Yeah, the only thing I would say is that I've been told I've been full of a lot of things. I'm not sure how many times it was intelligence. So thank you for that. I think we're ready to start with the PowerPoint. If Sharon could put that up for us. I'm really happy to be doing this today. I think these sessions I've heard about them from a lot of attendees that get much out of it. So hopefully that will continue with today's as well. I'm kind of presenting this a little bit about myself, but mostly from the work environment. I know that a lot of you are already leaders on your chapter, your state, and even national committees. So you're all leaders already, and you'll be moving up in your professional positions as well. So we'll take it from that. We're going to start with what is a goal setting process. I have one piece I really like. It's called a SWOT, and we'll talk about that. We are going to review again. You just heard about these, but the SMART goals and benefits of goal settings. And then we'll look for questions, if any. If you have questions as we go along, we can address those as it happens. So let's get started. What is a goal? It's an idea of the future or desired result that a person, individual, or group of people envision, plan, and commit to achieve. Now, these goals can change throughout your lifetime, throughout your careers. I basically, as you probably gleaned from the introduction, did mine backwards. Before I became a medical assistant, I had already done 4 years of college. I've gone on and done my master's degree. I went in the military, and I came back and decided, now what? And I decided I wanted to do something medical. So hence, I moved on to that process of attaining that goal, which I did, have never regretted a minute of it. So once you have achieved your desired result, it doesn't mean that you're at the end of where you're going to be personally or professionally. There are many opportunities every day out there that you will run into. It might spark a new desire about a new profession. It might be a new organization you want to join or check into, or maybe be a volunteer at your local hospital. There's so many things that you can do with what you've already accomplished. But if you're actually going to sit down and look at the goal setting process, you need to be specific with your aims and objectives. It won't do you any good to have an elephant in the room. You want to make this something that you have a really good chance of achieving, and that gives you the encouragement to move forward with that process. Make sure they're easily incorporated and executed into what you want, whether it's your personal life or your practice. And then we have to have ways of measuring those and be specific with the objectives that you want to achieve. And we're going to take a look at all of those. So next, before you implement the goal setting process, you first need to understand your organization pretty much inside and out, and where you currently are in relation to both internal and external factors that affect your business or organization. There are multiple tools out there to assist you. I personally am partial to SWOT. This is done with a whole group of people. It's all of your employees, or it's all of the people that you're with. This is where you're going to learn from everyone, and everyone should have a hand in setting the goals that you want your business to run by. What you do is you get all of your people together. It's a free-flowing idea of ideas. You set a certain amount of time for that. Then they're arranged by priority and choosing your top number of goals. Now, SWOT stands for the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats that face your organization. And I have done this several times. I've done it a couple of times with the AAMA, multiple times outside of the AAMA, and it really is an eye-opening exercise for these organizations. So the goal setting is a strategic process, and you need to take your time to do it. You need to be specific. Make sure your objectives are something that is achievable. And you can decide at the beginning of your exercise, is this for short-term, intermediate, or long-term? And that will help you in the process as well. So underneath once we start that process, if we could go back, Sharon, to the SMART goals. They've seen this once today, but we can just run it through it again. Thank you. Personal or business related, when defining goals, they should be SMART goals. And you'll hear that from every speaker around the country, around the world, that talks about strategic planning and goal achievement. Be specific in what it is you're looking for. You cannot say, there used to be a big joke about all the beauty contests, and the contestants would always get up there and say they wanted world peace. That was the answer to their question. I understand completely. Everybody wants that, but you got to be more specific. Break it down, because that is like addressing the elephant in the room. Measurable. You want them to have clear metrics so that you can go back and actually measure, have we achieved 5% of what we wanted, 95% of what we wanted, and be able to make those into reports that you can give out to your department heads. Attainable, make them realistic. I once half sarcastically said to Don Valeza, why can't we just purchase all of the people that are giving credentials other than ours? Well, you can imagine what he said after he turned white and nearly fainted. But it was a conversation to just say, we need to be realistic in what we want. I would love to be the only certifying association, but unfortunately we're not. So our goals need to be attainable and realistic, relevant, aligned with company-wide aims. And you'll hear, if you tune into the BOT meetings or attend your management meetings at your professional offices, you're often going to hear that what their aims are for the company. Many of these companies have you sign agreements when you join them that you do align yourself with company-wide aims. If they're a very altruistic organization, then you need to be part of that in the planning process as well. And time bound. Everything needs to have a deadline. We as individuals, as humans, function better when we have a deadline to follow. Some of us come screaming in at the last 11th hour with what we need to do, and that's how we function, but we get it done. But do make sure you have some realistic deadlines. Okay. Next, we can talk about benefits. Now, the benefits of goal setting, you think this, probably you're imagining that this is a very painful process. It isn't painful, but it isn't something you can necessarily do in one meeting. You all need to commit to the process of coming up with goals to follow. You need to commit to the education that you're going to have to give to your employees and other department people to get them to follow this. So not only that, but you got to look at the end result and know that these are going to be valuable to you, that it is going to be something that will bring benefits such as improved performance, improved focus and persistence, increased motivation. And we want all of our people to have increased motivation. You want them to come to work excited, be wanting to move up to another level, volunteer for additional positions to learn more about the organization or the company that you work for. These will also increase autonomy and self-determination. It gives people a sense of they do have that autonomy to work in your organization. And it also increases task enjoyment. So all of these, even though they're done in meetings and you try to be professional about it, you can joke and poke at people now and then and have a good time doing it. But this is also a time that you can bond with your other employees and workers. So, what to expect from your setting of goals. When you are all done and you go look back at these, you should be able to feel that this will motivate you and your coworkers, be specific and well-defined. They should be in writing. If you don't put your goals in writing, it's like playing the old game gossip. I say something to Candy, who says something to Virginia, who says something to Shirley, who comes back to me and it's like, what is she talking about? It changes frequently. Exactly. Jeanette just wrote in the chat, think it, then ink it. And if it's down in writing, then you have ownership. You have to take ownership of that. The goals help plan your work and your work plan. If you have a big project that's expected to be 18 to 24 months, then you're going to want to really set down with all the people involved and break that into smaller increments so that you do feel like you're moving ahead. It will also cause you, if it's in writing, to stick with the plan. It will improve your operations and the satisfaction of your employees. For example, we had to move out of our city hall here in Bangor. It's a very historic old building. It needed work. We have been doing our city business in a much smaller building that's not ours, we're renting, for about 18 months now. And we are finally going to move back in on Monday. So we're hoping that that will be a really nice end to all of those meetings that we had to set through. And people are so excited to be going back to their own offices. So sticking with it is going to be important. When you're talking about principles of goal setting, it must have commitment of everybody. So when your management brings people together and asks for your opinion, you really need to be transparent, clear, and give it to them. They are only doing this to hopefully make the organization better. Be very specific about what you think a goal should be. You should also challenge your organization with the degree of difficulty. If you know you're assigning something to very young, not chronological age, but employment age in your organization, the degree of difficulty that you give them should be equal to that so that they don't feel overwhelmed. Complexity should be the degree of goals demand. And then you have feedback, which in anything you do, in my opinion, in this organization or any other, you need to have feedback from those that are working on the project, from those that are perceived to be people who will be reading these and what they see in it. Look at in the healthcare field, you send out employee feedback goals. You also send them out to your patients. Now, when they come back, you want to take that to be very solid information that you can use to put into your goals for future years. So the process, once you've decided on the aims or the objectives, you've broken them down into areas that are easily incorporated and executed, you now create measurable and specific objectives you want to achieve. And when we were talking about SWOT a few minutes ago, one of the things that often comes out of that is the desire to increase membership, for example. That's a great goal to have. You also need to have something in there about what percentage. You can't just say increase membership because that isn't really enough of a drive to expand that goal. So we'll come up with a percentage, or we'll come up with a number of new members in a certain time period. And that will give us specific objectives we need to obtain, give back to our membership department or whoever's working on it. So the SMART goals we've already gone over. You have a slide of those that you can keep for your own reference to look back at. We did look at the benefits of goal setting. I would say that they should, above all, motivate you, be specific and well-defined. They should be in writing, help plan your work and work your plan, stick with it, ink it, as Jeanette mentioned, to make sure that it's there. Now, this has been on a professional level as far as your jobs. Now, from personal experience, like I said, I did my education backwards. I started out with a couple of degrees, went to work for a newspaper, decided that really wasn't what I wanted to do. I stayed there 10 years. And then we had, this was around the time that there was a fight for women maintaining jobs, but losing other jobs to male counterparts who had less education. So I left that organization and went to work for the hospital. And that was where I really started the wanting to do more in healthcare. So before I was even there a month, I had signed up for a medical assisting program, went through, got that. Then I decided, well, I want to teach. So I went back, got my master's degree, and that opened doors that I never even thought about, because there aren't a lot of certified medical assistants that hold a master's degree. So I was able to move on into the education side, I really liked that a lot, being able to bring young people in that had had no opportunities handed to them, help them, mentor them along the way, and watch them move up the ladders in the state and chapter levels. So from that perspective, I think whatever you do, if you're good at it and you enjoy it, you should share it. And I think we share a lot in this organization of our experiences. After I left and got my master's, I did go back to 2 colleges. I ran 5 different programs in one college, all medical. And in another, I had a medical assisting program and 2 other not medical. And I don't regret that. It was time out. And as I say, I had retired like 3 times and I'm still working. I am working now at St. Joe's, basically doing patient representative service. So I get a lot of people that will come by, and a lot of my patients know me from umpteen practices around town, but it's been great. I've made a lot of lasting relationships. It's kind of sad now to see that the main hospital here is having a really hard time financially. And I'm getting a lot of calls on a daily basis about, well, what's going to happen? We don't know. And I know that Dawn has been researching what some of the ramifications might be from some of the executive orders. And I still say that we need to be out there touting who we are, letting people know what we can do and what our certification means. Yeah, Sharon, did I miss a slide? I don't think so.
No, the next one is for questions. You're good.
Okay. I feel like this was going to be a lot longer, but all right, this is a good time. Sharing and asking questions. Are there any questions? I thought this was going to take longer than it obviously has. No questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
For those of us that maybe aren't at the educational level, a master's degree to be able to teach, what would you recommend we do in the meantime? Maybe if we're working on our bachelor's, what opportunities are there for medical assistants that are interested in teaching who don't hold a master's degree yet? Or who should they reach out to? What resources can we review?
Yeah, sure. There are a lot of opportunities in the community colleges and, the state colleges also are always looking for teachers, educators that are new, that are not long-term educators, but have had a lot of experience in medical assisting. There's multiple ways to do that. And you mentioned most of them. You can continue doing CEU articles, attending meetings like this, going to, I know at the national conference, we have a leaders session that they run for educators. Anybody can go. And it's just really getting your foot in the door. You can start out as a contingent instructor that you go in, adjunct, you teach as needed. And most of these places don't require a master's degree. That just happened to be what I had when I went in. I have seen them hire with associates. I have actually, yeah, I've hired a few that were at the associate level. So don't feel that it's out of your reach because you're in an associate degree program. It's not. You have much to offer. And students relate really well to people that have been there, done that. And never in my courses did I ever talk about level of master's degree until we got into accreditation. And then that was different. So no, there's a lot of opportunities out there. And I would say if you're interested, you can contact me. There's many of us that could answer questions about getting you into a position to teach. There's people in the room with you that are teaching now. So that could help you as well.
Hi, Sue,
Thank
it's
you.
Candy. I have there's a question in the chat that if you could go over the SWOT in
Sure.
more detail. I know there's some other questions and some hands up too, but I will say before you do that, that SWOT has been so beneficial to the board. And so thank you for bringing that, to us. But if you
You're
could
welcome.
kind of explain it, I know that Virginia put in there what it meant, but I still think people might be a little confused on that. Thank you so much.
Sure, no problem. When we got ready to do a SWOT, I'll use the one for the AAMA because it was for the board. And it was really a time of, it's a lot of fun, but you get a lot of work done. And we would have the whole group that was going to be there that would be involved in the room. We had whiteboards set up, and each whiteboard had a title. It would have like strengths on one, weaknesses on one, opportunities on one, and threats. And then the first thing we did was ask everyone to look at those and what were their top priorities that they would like to see accomplished in the next year to 18 months, whatever we chose. And they would all take their time and write down things. I sometimes would assign it ahead of time. If not, we did it there. We took the time. They would write them on sticky notes, and then they'd go up. And when they were done, they would put them on the area that they felt they belonged to. If it was a strength, they put it on that one. And then the group as a whole goes down through everything that was turned in from everybody. And then they have to look at all of them and decide what do they see as the top 3 for the group. And we keep whittling them down until there's a reasonable number. And then the group has to say, okay, this is short-term, mid-term, long-term. And then we start using that as starting the formulation of their strat plan. And we would move from there. And we just do that all the way down the line through all 4 of them. Now, the strengths and the weaknesses are really internal. Okay, so those are internal organizational things that you would be looking at. Opportunities and threats are external. So your opportunities might be, well, I think we've used one, partnerships, for example. Who is the organization or the business wanting to partner with on some extra projects coming up, if that would be the case? And threats obviously are, for us, it will always be other credentials that we are viewing as cutting into our membership or whatever the view is. So those are the 2 external things, are the opportunities and the threats. And we just keep working that process until we can come up with the basis of a strategic plan. We used a whole day for that pretty much. And it did give them a good basis to work from to form their strat plan. Does that explain that better?
I think it does, Sue, for those that have not participated in one. Darlene has a question for you. Go ahead, Darlene.
Well, I didn't, thank you for allowing me to speak again. I didn't particularly have a question, but I was thinking in terms of to the person who asked about what educational or what teaching opportunities there would be until and unless like you have your bachelor's or a master's or whatever. One of the things that came to mind for me, I mentioned a little bit, is that within your practice, you know, I think I spoke toward, you know, volunteering for new initiatives and things like that. And in major in family and internal medicine, you know, I know Carla could probably speak to this even more than myself, but, you know, we have annual credentialing for our medical assistants. There's, you know, multiple components to that. Some of it has to do with our participation in the American Heart Association Target BP program around the proper techniques of taking blood pressures, et cetera, using home blood pressure logs, all kinds of things. But the point I want to make is that, you know, that annual credentialing opportunity would be something maybe you could volunteer with to get some educating experience, even in your current workplace. That then would bode well on a resume, even with your associates, that you would apply, you know, to a community college, et cetera, for a teaching position. They may ask you, well, what kind of education experience do you have? Say, well, in my workplace, I participate in annual credentialing. I educate, you know, monthly or quarterly on whatever the case may be. But I think short term, you know, that you can investigate some opportunities to get some experience under your belt, so that when you do have the credentials that you want to move that forward, that, you know, you can easily, fluidly, you know, walk into a role like that and basically act like you own the place, like you've been doing it all your life. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dawn?
Yes, thank you. First, I want to thank the presenters, Sue and Darlene. Excellent presentations. I learned a lot, and I wanted to mention a few things. Also, Sue, I reaffirm that the SWAT has worked very well for the AAMA Board of Trustees and other boards, and you do a tremendous job in facilitating that. In regard to the question of teaching, the CAHEMP standards under MAERB's jurisdiction, they do have requirements for program directors, but they have fewer requirements for educators and instructors, especially for adjunct instructors. So you may want to see whether there's an opportunity to teach a class in your specific area of expertise. I think it would be easier to get your foot in the door that way. Excuse me. And also, as Sue mentioned, I'm reviewing the educational provisions of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and there are some significant ones regarding education and credentialing. And one thing I'm starting to look at is the workforce Pell Grant program that was newly created by this legislation. As you know, it was enacted July 3rd, so very new. And that could have some implications. So I will be studying that and writing about that. And I will let all of you know the impact of that bill on education, specifically medical assisting education.
Thank you for that, Dawn. That would be appreciated by all, I'm sure. It's a question on everybody's mind. It changes frequently. And one thing that I didn't mention, and I will now that you've brought up some of your points, in Maine, some of our lab instructors have come out of students that are in programs that really enjoyed the lab and the work in the lab and volunteered to be a lab assistant, where they could go in and help grade the exams and set up the tests and whatever they were doing. And they were eventually hired on as lab instructors. So any of your classes that you can offer to run a student study group, get involved in the student mentoring program, anything that brings light to your skills and what your credential is going to be and how you present yourself can be helpful in getting in the door to teach. And, you know, education is a big, we base our whole creed on education and formal education. So it's nice to know some of you want to do that. Truthful. Anything else? Was there anything else in the chat? We did the SWOT. We talked about education.
There's a question in there on how medical is, no, sorry, I lost it. There was another question in there. Disappeared.
Advice for membership increase goal setting.
Membership increase goal setting. Yes, I do. And I think this membership has been one of the tougher things that any of us have worked on from the chapter level right up through the national level. And we've made some inroads. We get reports all the time of membership and what the increase is. But I think we've brainstormed some really good things, and everything from way back in the 80s, we talked about having, and some of you will remember this, the 60-second elevator speeches that we were supposed to be able to give when we were out at conferences and things like that. But I think attending any medical assisting function, introducing yourself, volunteering to help at state conferences, at chapter conferences, trying to become mentors is that's the possibilities are endless for you if you are a mentor. I think, as the question just came up in the SWOT, states should really try to do a SWOT and really look at what are you doing currently? And that might bring to light some other things that you could attempt to do better. Are you going to go from 0 to 60? Who knows? You never know what's really going to catch on. But the bonding of the group and the working together, the reaching out to bring your conference speakers in, or having a weekend where it's kind of a educational, fun, split weekend. People are really still really curious about the CMA, AAMA credential, and I still get questions about that. And like I said earlier, it's really based on we are the only ones that have formal education attached to it. And that's what's going to get your foot in the door to get you hired. Because above all, the physicians and the hiring people, and I will say here that Dawn and the current president, Virginia, and Monica, they have attended, and we do every year, MGMA, PACOM, and some of these other places where they can really speak to what we can do, who we are, how we got there. And Dawn has made some amazing contacts for the AAMA by continuing to go to these. And I think that's what we have to do, is keep forging ahead and just singing our song. It's a good one. Dawn, did you have something else?
Yes, I would encourage all of you to continue to reach out to the medical community by various means, local meetings, state meetings. But I would also encourage you to reach out to the nurse practitioner community and the physician assistant community. That's rather new, but there are As I think some of you know, a lot of medical assistants who are working for nurse practitioners, physician assistants, as well as physicians. If you can possibly go to some of the state meetings or the regional meetings of the nurse practitioners and physician assistants or physician associates, as some states prefer to use that term, I think we should really encourage that because that could spur some membership opportunities as well.
Absolutely. That's where the, well, I don't mean this as a total political statement, but that is really where the grassroots movement of medical assistants has been over the years. In the steps we've taken is by the outreach and going and having people like Don and our board go out and speak. You know, you don't have to have a 4-year college degree, master's degree, or anything else, particularly to go and maybe be a speaker at your chapter or state level. If you have a skill, a special skill or something that they see in you, there's also lots of room for mentors. I mean, I probably have 50 people that have mentored me in this organization. And still today, we have relationships. So it's important to just get out there, be proud of who you are, be professional, and try to find ways to be involved. And believe me, once you put the flag out there, they'll come looking for you. So, anything else that we overlooked or wanted to go back to? Shirley, are you still here?
I'm still here. Doesn't look like anybody else has put anything in the chat. You've given a lot of people a lot of things to think about doing a SWAT in or a chapter or their state. It is a good thing. We have done this in our state. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be interesting to see what the outcome is at our meeting. So yeah. Sharon, if you could put the QR code in the chat for people to do. Yes, so
I think so. There's a hand. Denise, somebody said we missed a question in the chat.
Oh, someone had asked about getting an MA program starting in their state or their area.
That's what I was going to say, Sue. This is Denise.
Hi, Denise. How to get one started in the area? Was that the question?
How Denise? To get it? Yeah.
So the question was actually advice on how to get the MA program started back in their area.
Oh, started back up? One that had been there and it closed or something?
Yeah, it looks like Tony's wanting to see about it here in Kentucky. They had one in the Western Kentucky area, and they haven't had it for several years, and they're trying to get it going again.
I would strongly suggest that Dawn would have a lot of information too to share on that, but they need to get in touch with the continuing education, but the certifying board has things. You would have to follow the standards and all of that. And mayor would be involved. Dawn, what would you say their first step would be, mayor?
Yes, I think it would be good to contact the accreditation department that works with the Medical Assisting Education Review Board. And you're right, we do have resources as well. I think the first step would be to talk with the mayor staff and copy me on that as well. And we can all work together to see what we can do.
There was something about ABHES in the chat. I'm sorry, I saw ABHES and then it flipped off.
I was just thinking, mayor works closely with KHEP, but ABHES would be another option for getting reaccredited, correct?
You're right, Virginia. Yes,
Okay.
you should also contact the Accrediting Bureau of Health Education Schools. That would be another option.
Mhm. Don, one of the questions that just popped up was the question of who is the mayor staff. I think they heard mayor, MAYOR. It's the Medical Assisting Education Review Board.
That is correct. And the executive director is Sarah Marino. And the assistant executive director is Jim Hardman. They are the two primary staff of the accreditation department that provide services to MAYORB and all accredited programs, all KHEP accredited programs. If you go to their website, you will be able to get contact information, and their website is maerb.org. So again, when we're talking about MAYORB, we're talking about the Medical Assisting Education Review Board.
Did that answer your question? Okay. Yes, okay, great. I love these sessions because you learn so much and you share what you know with somebody else who shares it with somebody else. And that's how we keep continuing doing what we do. Virginia, did you want to say anything?
I thank all of you for coming. Sue and Darlene, you gave us a lot of great information to think about, not just in our own lives, but even setting goals in our states and in our chapters, and even for us on the board, looking nationally. So we do appreciate you guys taking your time and sharing with us today. Thank you, Candy, and your team for everything that you guys have done throughout the year.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure doing it. Hopefully it gleaned some information for you in there somewhere. It was good seeing all of you, even if you're this big.
I too want to thank you again, Sue. Even though we've all, or some of us have heard some of this information, it is so great to hear it again because it is never too many times. Reminders are wonderful, and it just shows that we all can grow and learn from educational sessions. And so I do thank you and Darlene again for your presentation today. I do want to make sure that everybody that has attended put their name and their member ID in the chat. And I think the sign up, there it is right there. Thank you, Sharon, is now on the screen. Make sure you either do the link or barcode scan it so that you can get credit for today's session, and that link will be available for 3 hours only. And so please do that now so that you remember to do it. I do also want to thank President Thomas, immediate past President Case, Dawn, and all the other members of the board and the leadership strategy team who are on this today. Your attendance is very much appreciated, and your input into the session was also appreciated. Especially do want to thank the team, Carla, Shirley. Now, Carla, you're not the only one. Here, my brain has gone. Carla, Shirley, Jasmine, and Krista. They were Team Yellow. They were the team that was responsible for obtaining these speakers and getting this session for you. So once again, I encourage all of you that are attending the national conference to sign up for the leadership session. I don't know if people saw earlier in the chat, there were some duck gooses, which will be attributing factors in the leadership session. So please watch for more information. I think that you will find the leadership session to be enlightening, engaging, and very informative. So once again, thank you to my wonderful leadership development strategy team. And if there aren't any other questions, then I think our session is over.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. How about a chicken?
No chickens this time, Darlene.
Thank you,
See
everyone,
you all
for
at
attending.
conference.
Yes.
Thank you.
Looking forward. Thank you. And
Thank you,
looking forward to
everyone.
seeing you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your Saturday
Thank
and
you.
weekend.
You too.
You too as
Thank you
well.
so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Tony can't pull up the form.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Tony, did you try the link and the QR code both?